A reading from Zechariah chapter 1 verses 7 to 17. On the 24th day of the 11th month, the month of Shebat, in the year of Darius, the word of the Lord came to the prophet Zechariah, son of Berechiah, the son of Iddo. During the night I had a vision, and there before me was a man riding a red horse. He was standing among the myrtle trees in a ravine. Behind him were red, brown, and white horses. I asked, "What are these, my lord?" The angel who was talking with me answered, "I will show you what they are." Then the man standing among the myrtle trees explained, "They are the ones the Lord has sent to go throughout the earth." And they reported to the angel of the Lord who was standing among the myrtle trees, "We have gone throughout the earth and found the whole world at rest and in peace." Then the angel of the Lord said, "Lord Almighty, how long will you withhold mercy from Jerusalem and from the towns of Judah, which you have been angry with these 70 years? So the Lord spoke kind and comforting words to the angel who talked with me. Then the angel who was speaking to me said, "Proclaim this word. This is what the Lord Almighty says. I am very jealous for Jerusalem and Zion, but I am angry with the nations that feel secure. I was only a little angry, but they added to the calamity. This is what the Lord says. I will return to Jerusalem with mercy, and there my house will be rebuilt. And the measuring line will be stretched out over Jerusalem, declares the Lord Almighty. Proclaim further, this is what the Lord Almighty says. My towns will again overflow with prosperity, and the Lord will again comfort Zion and choose Jerusalem." So this is the first of the visions, and Zechariah right at the beginning gives us the date when the visions came, on the 24th day of the 11th month, the month of Shebat, in the second year of Darius. This was about 5 months after the work on the temple had resumed, that we heard about in Ezra. This vision has Zechariah seeing a man mounted on a horse, with behind him other horses. When Zechariah asks what they are, he's told they're the ones the Lord has sent throughout the earth, and they've reported back to the angel of the Lord that they found the earth at peace and rest. It seems to imply a contrast with Jerusalem and Judah, which are lying in ruins, which we heard about in Lamentations. The angel of the Lord asks God. Now notice he uses the title Lord Almighty. This is the covenant God who is in command of all creation. It's his concern, and he has the power to intervene. God's been angry, but now time has elapsed. It's time for restoration. So how much longer are you going to delay for, God? We find out about how God feels about the sin of Israel. He's jealous, verse 14. Remember from Deuteronomy in Amos, Hosea, that he's intolerant of rivalry or unfaithfulness. He's angry on his people's behalf. The nations who are now supposedly at peace have been threatening his people. Now, that might strike us as a bit rich, since, as we saw in Lamentations, it was all their own fault anyway. But they'd exceeded, these nations, these other nations, they'd exceeded the role that God had given them. They'd taken advantage of the situation. They'd broken God's limits. So how will God resolve the situation? He says that he will return to Jerusalem. He will once again be present in Jerusalem and will show mercy, showing something of his deep, unconditional love. Remember, because of sin, compassion had been withdrawn. But once again, he now shows compassion. And notice, God makes 3 promises. First of all, he says the house will be rebuilt. This is a divine guarantee that as they return to him, The work will be done, despite, as we've seen in Ezra, the opposition. Then the second promise is that a measuring line will be stretched out. The work of rebuilding will go from the temple across the whole city, and we find out more about that in Nehemiah. Then thirdly, the peace and prosperity that's promised will go beyond Jerusalem. It'll be so grand it can't be contained, delivering more than they could expect or ask for. But you notice this peace and prosperity is more than just material. It's comfort. Now remember Luke chapter 2 verse 25, when Jesus is presented at the temple to Simeon. It says, "Now there was a man in Jerusalem called Simeon, who was righteous and devout. He was waiting for the consolation of Israel." This is what Simeon was waiting for. And he saw it coming in the person and the work of Jesus. Then, do you notice God chooses Jerusalem? It's an action of God on behalf of his people, meaning they can face the future with confidence, not on their own merit or their own right, but God chooses. God hasn't abandoned his people. He has chosen. Remember Romans chapter 8 verse 30. God has chosen. And what he has chosen, he will follow through on. And this gives the Israelites hope and confidence for the future. And you know, the same applies to us. What God has chosen, even when circumstances puzzle us, when everything seems to be in ruins all around us, we have this promise that he will not abandon us. Isn't that a great comfort? So in this vision, we find a God who is jealous for his people, who will avenge those who harm his people beyond what he allows. A God who is generous, who gives more than they could reasonably expect. A gracious God who chooses and will not abandon no matter what the circumstances. What an amazing God. But I want to go back and just pick up on a couple of details. You'll notice it's the angel of the Lord who intercedes, who prays for the people, asking God, how long will you withhold mercy? So who is this angel of the Lord? Well, he appears at key points in the Old Testament. Genesis chapter 16, he tells Hagar to return to Sarah and is referred to as God. In Genesis 18, he's recognised as divine by Abraham. In Joshua, he's recognised as holy. So who is he? Now the second thing to think about is where the angel of the Lord is. Verse 11. They reported to the angel of the Lord who was standing among the myrtle trees. Now what do the myrtle trees symbolise? Well, the commentators think it's Israel. Now what is a myrtle tree like? It's a small evergreen that never gets above 5 feet. It has dark green leaves and white star-like fragrant flowers. By being an evergreen, it's illustrating the Jewish people's resilience in good times and bad. By being small, it's illustrating the insignificant state of the nation when compared with the world powers all around them. It's not a cedar of Lebanon, which is majestic, or an oak, which is strong, having blossoms that emit a fragrance when crushed, illustrates the grace of suffering, the effect on the community around. Being placed in a ravine, verse 8, shows the low state of the Jewish people. What a picture. What a picture of the church today. We're not mighty or a cedar of Lebanon, but a myrtle, evergreen, that no matter what happens to us, we will be resilient. The church will survive. Nothing will defeat the church of God. Small, yes, when compared to the influences of the world. And I pray fragrant to our local communities. Now let's take the picture a bit further. At this point, rebuilding the temple has just begun. The city is in ruins, it's a smouldering wreck. People are far from their homes, and who's among them? The angel of the Lord. Many of the commentators believe this is the second person of the Trinity. The second person of the Trinity, who we know in his incarnate form as Jesus, is with and in the midst of his people. That's the picture that's been presented here. And what's he doing? Well, he's checking out the state of the earth for the Lord Almighty and interceding to the Lord Almighty on behalf of his people. That's a beautiful picture for us. Yes, we're like a myrtle tree. Small, seemingly insignificant, but evergreen, resilient, fragrant, giving off a rich smell that affects our community, enhances our community. Now jump with me to Revelation chapter 1. I turned around to see the voice that was speaking to me, and when I turned I saw 7 golden lampstands, and among the lampstands was someone like a son of man, dressed in a robe reaching down to his feet, with a golden sash around his chest. The hair on his head was white like wool, as white as snow, and his eyes were like blazing fire. His feet were like bronze glowing in a furnace, and his voice was like the sound of rushing waters. In his right hand he held 7 stars, and coming out of his mouth was a sharp, double-edged sword. His face was like the sun, shining in all its brilliance. When I saw him, I fell at his feet as though dead. Then he placed his right hand on me and said, "Do not be afraid. I am the first and the last. I am the living one. I was dead, but now, look, I am alive forever and ever, and I hold the keys of death and Hades. Write therefore what you have seen, what is now, and what will take place. The mystery of the 7 stars that you saw in my right hand and of the 7 golden lampstands is this. The 7 stars are the angels of the 7 churches, and the 7 lampstands are the 7 churches." This is a picture given to John. It's showing Jesus amongst 7 golden lampstands. Those lampstands are explicitly the church. And from here, Jesus speaks comfort and challenge to God's people. So in Zechariah's time, Jesus, the second person of the Trinity, is in the midst of his people. He's in the midst of his chosen people today, no matter how we may feel. He's in the midst of any Christian gathering. He's with you. A message of comfort for God's people, whether they live in Zechariah's time or in ours, the chosen people. So what an amazing God we have. A God who is jealous on our behalf. A God who acts on behalf of his people. A God who is generous beyond our dreams. What an amazing Jesus. Present with us when we are weak compared to the forces around us. In our midst, knowing what's happening to his people, telling the Almighty God, interceding for his people, for us. What an amazing comfort for them and for us. But it also presents us with a challenge, doesn't it? Remember Matthew 28 verse 20. Teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you, and surely I am with you always to the very end of the age. Jesus, the second person of the Trinity, tells us to teach so that his people may obey. That's the challenge. Do we teach this? So in this vision, an amazing comfort, a vision of an amazing God, an amazing Jesus, but a challenge. Do we teach this?